Hello and welcome to today's 2022 Security Industry Megatrends. Today we are featuring 4 distinguished panelists, all with the goal of helping you stay ahead of the rising tide of challenges, specifically in data privacy, alarm responsiveness, and staff retention. To start us off, I'd like to introduce our webinar moderator and keynote panelist, Victoria Ferro, the president of MicroKey Solutions. With almost 20 years in the alarm security and monitoring software industry, she has a very unique view of the most effective practices in the business. And in today's keynote, she'll be sharing her perspectives on evolving your business workflows with the goal to share how your business can be more efficient and see significant cost savings. Get your notepads ready and enjoy today's webinar. Victoria?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I just wanted to turn my camera on to say hello, and we'll go ahead and get into the presentation. So again, thank you, and good afternoon for those of you that are east of us, and good morning to those of you who started from the west of us. I'd like to take just 5 minutes of your time before we get started for you to shift your mindset from your daily grind of your operations to what your tasks are on a daily basis to a more strategic focus. I'd like you to take a moment and picture yourself not doing those tasks in the day-to-day, but picture yourself above your business, looking down as if you're from above, where you can analyze your current workflows, where you can see where people are passing paper, how different orders get initiated within your organization, see where it might be beneficial to evolve, and brainstorm how you might make it more effective. The beginning of the year is really a great time to do this type of workflow assessment. So here we go. You're looking down at your workflows. Think to yourself, how did these workflows come about? Did some of them form based out of having to do workarounds due to the limited functionality of technology or disparate systems at the time? Are there any things that you and your staff are currently doing that are no longer relevant? Those are the old, we print this report because Betty said we had to print these reports. They've always just done it, and they continue to do it and put that work into a file cabinet and nobody sees it. Keep looking deeper. Are there any workflows that currently require you to continue printing? Do you use static spreadsheets, or is your data dynamic? In general, you're doing a sanity check to figure out which areas are ripe for evolution, because if they're streamlined and automated, it will save you time, money, and it's going to allow your staff to really focus on more important business objectives, such as perhaps sales or customer service. So you might ask yourself, Victoria, that's all great. How do I get started? An easy place to start is to seek out reports that may no longer be needed or no longer used. Another great area, if they're not needed, just don't print them. Just stop printing them altogether. If you don't need the printed reports, perhaps consider sharing them in a network area. You have your network space. Instead of printing the physical paper, share it to your network drive. Save it. Give only access to the people in your organization that need it. Then I want you to look for any other processes that are just not needed and just remove that burden from your staff altogether. There's no reason for it. They're not needed. Just tell them to stop doing it. Then take the list of workflows you've targeted for improvements. You've done that needs analysis. You've taken a look at your inefficiencies and you said, okay, these 3 areas are what we need to target to improve this year. Schedule a meeting with your current software provider. Many times there's automation features or new features that were released since the time that your processes started that you just don't know about. So you may have missed some updates, you may have missed some new feature documentation, but you may be pleasantly surprised because automation continues to grow and automate our businesses. Automation also helps our business while reducing our carbon footprint. Office copy paper alone, guys, still account for over 20% of the total paper usage in the US. So think about that. Small businesses, offices account for 20% of the total paper usage in the entire United States. You can save up to $3,000 annually for a small business, but that's not even the biggest benefit. Think of the information security risk of floating paper that you have. So not only do you have that information on paper, now you also have to deal with how you're going to dispose of that sensitive information on paper. And there's also 50 to 70% of office space that's used for paper storage. You have probably closets in your office. You have file systems all over the place that are storing these reports. You have the cost for postage to send statements and invoices. And there is so much wasted time for dual entry from paper into a system. Now, picture being the ideal steward of resources where you can send all of your invoices and statements electronically, right? You're going to use ACH and EFT to electronically send and receive payments, have the ability to remotely access your data and documentation when you have the work from home situations. You're going to utilize remote service applications with your software providers that allow the techs to get their tickets online. You could deploy your techs from home, geographically schedule service appointments to save gas, allow for electronic signatures on site for customer payment. So imagine that. A setup where the customers can also update contact information with the monitoring station electronically without having to fill out paper contact sheets. It's amazing all of the automation that can be done in a modern software solution, and you could reap all the benefits from optimized workflows by automating all of these processes and going paperless. If your software is not able to accommodate the improvements you need to evolve based on your needs analysis and reduce your duplicate efforts, your duplicate entry, your duplicate papers, your static spreadsheets, it might be time for you to consider to transition to a more automated solution, something that's more all-in-one, that might be better for your workflows and overall efficiencies. And wink, wink, MicroKey Solutions does have such a solution. That's a shameless plug on my part. But yeah, like investigate what your current partner is. Find out what's been new, what you missed, and see if what you've identified that needs some streamlining could be accommodated in what you have or what you're just not utilizing. So as with any significant changes, you're going to need to create a business-wide plan to get your staff on board. So you can't just say, okay, here are the 3 areas that we're going to try to create some efficiencies. Here's the new workflow, and then expect everybody's going to pick up and be able to accommodate to that new workflow, right? So you're going to need to create a plan, and you're going to need to get your staff on board with that new plan. Have them be part of the new workflow. Have them learn the new features, the new functionality. And this is going to require frequent communication with your staff. This is going to require an investment in training. Perhaps you need to have an analyst come from your software company, or perhaps you want to investigate an analyst within the industry to come do a needs analysis and to help your staff with this new workflow. And after all is said and done, and you're implementing the new tools, the new practices, the new workflows, whether it's big or small, it's really important to assess how the changes are working out. Use checkpoints. So build those checkpoints into that business plan that you've created. So at the 1 month mark, we're going to check this. At the 2 month mark, it doesn't even have to be a time marker. It could be a time-saving marker. It could be a financial marker, but you want to use these checkpoints to ensure that the changes are not causing extra stress, extra time, extra systems, and that they are in fact making the process easier. And if they're not, get back to the drawing board and recreate a new plan. Look for new efficiencies or new workflow. I'd like to close my keynote presentation today by demonstrating how MicroKey Solutions is really walking the talk on improving workflows, reducing paper, and becoming good stewards of resources. As a company, MicroKey has committed to reducing our paper consumption by 75% this year alone. So I have a committee that is working diligently with a plan for this year to identify all of the areas of paper and to reduce our consumption, whether that means we have to purchase more scanners or look for more storage or more creative ways to do things. But as a company, we want to walk this talk, and we are committed to reducing our paper consumption by 75% this year alone. In addition to that, this is an initiative that is very dear to my heart, something that I think is extremely important, not just to North America and in the United States. I do believe this is a global importance. We have partnered with an organization called One Tree. They're a non-for-profit, and this organization is dedicated to the global reforestation. So through this exciting initiative, MicroKey is going to be donating 1% of all of our sales directly to planting trees. So anytime a customer makes a purchase, we have the ability to choose geographically where we would like to help the reforestation of that area. We would strongly encourage you to join us in this mission to reduce your paper consumption and to increase your automation for the betterment of your business, for streamlining automation, profitability, and most importantly, for the environment. And that brings me to the end of my keynote. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my part of the presentation. Now for the good stuff. We are going to be introducing the flagship presenters for today's webinar. Whether you realize it or not, guys, you have hit the jackpot today. You will walk away with the secrets to success in data privacy, alarm responsiveness, and staff retention. I'm very excited to have such a distinguished panel of industry experts with us today to guide us on this journey. So our opening panelist is speaking to us on privacy and how to reduce the risks. This is something that as a company, as a technology company, MicroKey lives and breathes every day. So this is so important. We're so excited to have Robb Smyth with us. He's the Executive Vice President at CSR Privacy Solutions and a certified information privacy manager. That means he has the credentials to know his stuff, guys. Robb oversaw the development of CSR's new privacy program, URISK, which is currently installed in several countries, helping businesses reduce the risk by providing proof of their compliance efforts. After Robb, we're going to be hearing from Mark Zimmerman, presenting on trends and best practices in alarm responsiveness. This is so key to our industry right now. Mark is CEO of Responder, where he leads an exceptional team reimagining the physical side of the security business. Responder is his fourth successful startup, so we're so thrilled to have you today, Mark. And our closer today is Tina Simolaris, Director of Global Customer Success at Immix. She'll be sharing strategies and best practices in staff retention. This is so important to us today with the limited staffing and the staffing problems all of us are experiencing in this climate. With more than 25 years of command center experience in senior management roles, her knowledge and expertise have helped shape and develop all types of centers, including video, call, alarm, GPS, and more. So as you guys can see, we have brought together a really fantastic panel. So let's get you some tips to help you run your business and make your lives easier today. Our first panelist, again, presenting the crucial strategies to overcome the ever-evolving challenge of data privacy on a daily basis. From CSR Privacy Solutions, Robb Smyth. Robb, we are pleased you could join us today. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity, Victoria. I will say I will speak for everybody. What a great initiative with your commitment of putting where your money, where your mouth is with One Tree. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And personally, from learning what you just shared, I know we have several workflows that could be re-looked at on an annual basis and get away from why do we do this, and well, just because we always have. so I think we all can take a note from that and progress for sure. I am going to touch on one of the things that Victoria kind of mentioned as part of that, and kind of where my whole presentation is going, really revolves around that paper risk. So we are going to talk about privacy in general, but realize when we're talking about privacy and regulations and laws that are out there, it's not just the electronic version that we hear about every single day in the news and all the stories with all the ransomware and the data breaches. I will tell you, and we'll kind of get to the end of this, that a significant amount of data breaches and things that happen with exposure of personal information are from the physical paper side. So the more that we can reduce that paper, the more that yourselves that are on this call and your clients can dramatically reduce their risk, which is really what we're trying to do from exposure and the data breach. So let's go ahead and get started. So the goal here is obviously to reduce risks. And I know one of every business's top priorities, including ours, is when we operate, what do we need to do to reduce our risk from several different factors. But what we're going to address really today is on the privacy side. And a lot of us, especially in alarm and security part of this, a lot of people deal with fire codes and going in and doing some of the regulation that has to do with fire items that revolve around those codes. Well, privacy is no different, and we're going to talk about this. That all 50 states have data breach laws and regulations that need to be followed, and we're continuing to see a greater influx in various states actually introducing their own privacy laws. Last year alone, we had Virginia that created a privacy law, as well as Colorado. California had actually created one, California Consumer Privacy Act a couple years ago, New York Shield Act. And all these things are following what everybody kind of is probably more familiar with, which is the GDPR regulations from Europe. So this is really where we're going to focus our time as we go through this here today. Just a tiny little bit about us. Our channel partners are some of the largest in the field. I'm going to touch on that in a second, but we've been in business for over 20 years. We are in 17 different countries with over 250,000 end users. But what makes us really unique from that aspect is we really focus on the small to medium-sized businesses. So our partners are usually some of the larger ones that you'll see here on the next slide. But what it really focuses on is the mom and pop businesses that all of our larger competitors don't focus on. So it doesn't matter the size of the business. Every single business, if they are incorporated in any sort of way running a business, has to follow some of these, if not all of these regulations that are out there based upon privacy. So some of the people that we work with, and I don't need to focus on any of the names, but we have several SDM 100 clients, the second largest global information management, medical waste companies. We have the second largest shredding companies. We have a top 20 parking management company. We do HR companies, so we deal with a lot of people that know what it means to protect a particular business, and whether it is from obviously shredding information, these usually revolve around personal information, so they already have ties into that. And what alarm and security companies are already doing is protecting a lot of the physical part of these businesses, and where we kind of tie into that is adding another dimension of something they also can protect from the personal information. So that's really kind of some of the focus as we get into this today. And so I just want to kind of give an idea of what is the definition of a data breach, and what are, you guys can read the slide, but the interesting part of this that I want to really show is also if it's viewed at the very bottom. These things can relate from a stolen laptop. This could be a lost cell phone. This could be emails sent to the wrong person. These could be the physical papers that are sitting on desks that accidentally leave when somebody leaves your desk and just grabs their stuff and leaves with some of yours. Could be a thumb drive that has been taken to your marketing company to send out a series of information and letterhead and marketing materials. So it is very important to understand what is a data breach, and it is a lot more than what we hear about on the news. couple of examples, and I think everybody on this call will agree that as a business, you hold some, if not a significant part of all of these examples of personal information. The interesting part of this is it doesn't necessarily sometimes have to be something very specific about something like just a social security number. Depending upon what it is tied to, it really revolves around 3 components. So it could be first name, last name, zip code. It could be last name, some sort of other identifier. So if I would mention to everybody on the call with maybe a last name of Woods and wears red and black, right? We immediately know who I'm referring to as Tiger Woods. So it is something that necessarily doesn't even have to be something very, very specific from the information you see on the screen. So I want to talk about this, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, but all businesses, no matter what kind of business they are required to protect personal information. So what does that really mean? And not only saying that you do it, but as part of this, it really needs, how do you document it? How do you prove that you are doing what is referred to as reasonable measures to protect that information that your clients have shared with you and obviously their clients? So that's really what this revolves, is you are required to do something and you're required to be able to prove it. As I mentioned, all 50 states do have data breach laws. I'm going to touch on another slide here in a second to show you how different some of the other privacy laws are. And here's where this is going, and this has actually grown by 2 states in the last couple months. Currently, there are 18 states, and at the end of this, I will send, if anybody wants to know what those 18 states are, that will publicly display data breaches that have affected the residents of those particular states. So if I was traveling, I'm actually a Florida resident. I happen to be in Washington right now. So if I went to a business here in Washington State and I signed up for, let's say, a loyalty program or something along those lines, and this business out here had some sort of data exposure to that information I gave to them, that particular business, if it met certain criteria, would have to report to the state of Florida, because those are the laws and regulations they need to adhere to, is where I'm from, not just the state that it's in. So that is extremely important, but it's really gotten to a point now of publicly shaming companies that have actually done a terrible job in protecting this personal information. So not only on top of that, usually what goes along with that is litigation. Just so when we talk about the risks, I think one of the most important things that you can understand, and the takeaway from this is why it's so important, is that a data breach in itself, you can actually sue somebody or sue a business without having to show person or any damages at this point. So the assumption would be that you can, eventually there would be damages down the road that I would have to help facilitate or fix. And I'll give everybody an example. Equifax. I'm sure everybody remembers Equifax breach, a couple of years ago. People were suing Equifax in small claims court to the point where they stopped sending lawyers to even try to fight it. They were just paying them off until the federal government got involved, because there was so many people involved, to actually stop it. So these are the kind of things that is going to continue to happen, and the growth of privacy in general, where this is going to go, I think is going to be those kind of litigation. So that's really what your clients need to really help protect against, is these frivolous lawsuits, or potentially real, but they can actually sue without even having to prove damages, which is actually kind of crazy, but that's very unique from that side of it. But the last thing, and I kind of said it and I don't want to gloss over it, businesses must adhere to the laws from where their customers are from, not just where their business is located. Down in Florida, we have an enormous amount of what's referred to as snowbirds. We deal a lot with HOAs and private clubs down in Florida. We have one particular club that has 900 members. They're from 45 different states here in the US and 9 different countries, Canada and obviously Europe, GDPR. So when they really looked at that database, they said, I would have no idea what I would need to do if I had any sort of exposure of personal information. Who do I need to report to, which states, what state format needed to be put in, as well as the federal regulators. So that is one of the most important takeaways, is it just isn't the laws of where you're located or where your clients are located, it's where their customers are from. So think of it from even on a mailing situation. If there is an online business, right, they're probably serving people from all over the world, not just the country. Here's a couple of quick, I did 5 different states. All the states have different requirements. If I had North Dakota or South Dakota on here, you'd probably just see 1 or 2 checks. So this again is something, and these are laws. So, these are different things that states are required to do. In this, a lot of the stuff's on our website, so I can facilitate that if you need to. But I want to kind of emphasize that all the states are really so dramatically different on what requirements you're supposed to do based upon that. It actually got to the point where Apple when California consumer privacy came out, they decided it was too difficult to try to figure out what to do by state, that they were going to treat all of their clients the same as the laws and regulations of California because of the sheer cost of trying to figure out what to do by each of the states. So California at the time was the most expansive. So they decided to treat everybody with that exact same aspect, which I think is getting to the point where people are really expecting that level of privacy. A couple of did you knows. More than 50% of businesses do not have an instant response plan. So what would you do if something happened? That honestly could save your business. So I'm going to get to that in a second. 80% of customers decide who to do business with based upon a company's reputation. I know that I changed a particular bank because of things that they shared. I wasn't affected. But it was something that I didn't think they should have shared with the federal government, but they did. So I ended up switching the banks. 40% of data breaches are caused by their third-party partners or their software partners. So there are roughly about 30% of the states require businesses in those states to have a contract with their third-party vendors on how that third-party vendor protects the personal information that they share with it. So it is extremely important to know if you're in one of those states that you're required to do that. And so I think that's extremely important to do. 25% are caused by employee errors, printing too much information that Victoria talked about and having that potentially be thrown in the trash versus if there's regulation, it requires that to be shredded. So very important with that. And the last part of this is really the reason why we've been so successful in some of the industries that we have is because, and this is an IBM statistic, 60% of small businesses will fail within 6 months after a cyber attack. So it is extremely important. Staffing is very low, as we all are probably battling with that in our own businesses. So if you had to mitigate potential issues and damages from a cyber attack and a data breach, the risk is significant of potentially not going back into business. So very important from that part of that. I would like to share a template of an instant response plan. As I mentioned, so many people don't have one. So if you would like to shoot me an email, I would be more than willing to share with what an instant response plan should look like, as well as from a data breach. The 2 biggest issues that you may have is actually the front door of your business is going to be your website, as well as your firewall or your router. So I am also more than willing to do a free scan of your firewall and your website to show you what potential vulnerabilities you have, if you'd like to do that as well. So I'm more than willing to share those 2 things as part of this. So again, I'd like to thank Victoria and Meredith for the opportunity today, and I appreciate everybody joining. And if I can help in any way, my email's on that slide. So thank you very much.
Rob, thank you so much. Do you mind giving us the answer to the question? Who should I call if my business has a potential data breach?
Yeah, absolutely. We always hear over and over that, oh, I'm just going to call my IT person. Well, part of this, and I didn't touch on this, but the slide number 2 or 3 talks about all the certifications of what it is. So anybody that deals with privacy, you do have to call a certified privacy professional to be able to truly assess what needs to be done by what federal agency, what regulators, and potentially what states, and how the reporting possibly could need to be done. So there are things, hopefully it's an all clear, you don't need to do any reporting. Sometimes you have to do regulation reporting, and the other part potentially is consumer reporting. So it gets very, very confusing if people don't understand the law of privacy, and they, hiding your head in the sand and crossing your fingers that no one's going to sue you just doesn't work anymore. It's too popular, and people are expecting much more from businesses.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you. Data privacy, from a small business owner to a large business owner, it could be extremely overwhelming. And you gave us some really good strategies for peace of mind. So for those of you that are keeping some notes, I took some key notes from Robb's presentation that I think are important that you may want to jot down. I'll just summarize those here. You and your clients need an incident response plan if something happens. And on the screen, you could see Robb's email. He has generously offered to share a free template with us. He will also scan your firewall and website for vulnerabilities. He'll do a free scan. He's willing to do that for our participants here today. And remember, you need documented proof of your protection efforts to protect yourself. And I think even, the most brilliant was the last question. If you did have a data breach, contacting somebody certified to direct you in the next steps. Really awesome information and invaluable to any business owner today. Thanks again, Robb.
Thank you.
This brings us to our next panelist, Mark Zimmerman, CEO of Responder, presenting on trends and best practices in alarm responsiveness. Mark, thank you so much for being with us on a panel today.
Victoria, it's a pleasure to be here. We're super excited about our partnership with MicroKey, and particularly now that I learned from your presentation that we share a love of trees. Responder also plants trees to offset the carbon emissions of our guard force as they're driving around to alarm locations. So that was fantastic to hear.
Wonderful.
I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about trends that we're seeing in the alarm response sector, as we look at if you're in the monitoring station business, or you're a security dealer, or you play any role in that space. At the end of the day, one of the key reasons anyone is buying a home alarm system is for that last mile of the service, if you will, that in the moment of truth, when my alarm goes off, that somebody is coming. Someone is coming to make sure that my family is safe, my property is safe, that my pets are safe, whatever the nature of the environment we're protecting. Before I get started, I thought I'd ask Meredith to put up a poll question. I'm curious how long each of you think it might take for the police to come in in the city in which you live. So you've had an alarm go off. It's triggered a signal in MicroKey. They've verified that your station has verified that this is a valid response, and now we're asking the police to come. And I'm curious what the audience thinks the average response time is. Is it 0 to 5 minutes, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, or 30 minutes or more for the police to arrive for that moment of truth at the end of the day? Well, I don't know where everyone lives, so knowing the exact answer to this question varies a lot by location. I see someone in the chat saying well over 2 hours. Odds are good if you live in California that you're well over 2 hours. I don't know any major jurisdiction where the 5 to 10 minutes that was just put up there is correct. There are no national statistics that we know of, but I thought I'd give you a couple of cities just for context. Last year in New York City, it was 44 minutes and 50 seconds was the average response time for the whole year. In Dallas, it was 35 minutes and 45 seconds. And in LA, most of the time they don't actually report it. They use something called broadcast and file. But of the incidents that they did report that they responded to, it was 1 hour and 38 minutes. So I think you were everyone who put 30 minutes or more. You folks are you have the correct answer very likely. Though maybe some of you live in jurisdictions that are better than mine. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about response trends. I think I'm going to talk to you about them in 3 main categories. I want to talk a little bit about changes going on in police forces, a little bit about technology change, and then about private security and how that plays into the response equation. So I'm talking about each of those buckets and try and give you a little bit of context about what's going on in the alarm response last mile service for all the alarm systems that we're involved with. So let's start with the police. This will be news to nobody on the call, but there has been no shortage of challenges for the police in the United States in the last year and change. But this is not a new thing. Since in 2008, there was about one police officer for every 300 Americans. That went down to one officer for about every 332 Americans in 2019. FBI hasn't reported this data for 2020 and 2021 on a national basis yet, but that was about an 11% decline over that decade. And in 2020, as we look at individual cities, we've seen more than that. A much steeper decline in 2020, and we expect that the 2021 numbers will continue that. And so there are simply fewer police officers available per capita to respond, and that number not only went down over that period. We're also seeing police morale challenges, police hiring challenges. It is not a good time to be a police officer in any jurisdiction, and certainly worse in some. And so what was already a very tough job that we were asking the police to do has only got harder in the last couple of years, and we expect that trend to continue. That's driven by tight budgets, tough hiring environments. You are all seeing that, and I know we're going to talk a little bit with Tina about hiring and retention later on. The police have the same set of challenges. Hiring and retaining staff is tricky. And so as a result of those resource constraints, they're looking to reduce quote unquote low value activities like false alarm response. Varies a little bit by jurisdiction. There are almost 18,000 different police agencies across the U.S. So you can imagine the challenge in gathering accurate data across all of these. So these are estimates taken from some of the larger agencies who have public reporting data, New York, Dallas, Chicago, etc. But roughly 5% of police time in Denver, for example, is spent responding to alarms, and 98% of those alarms are false. Of the 98% that are false, 2% are suspicious. So, we've arrived at the scene and we've seen that something valid likely triggered that an alarm. So there was a sign of vandalism or a door that looked like it might have been, jimmied, or that someone had damaged a window or something of that nature that is probably a sign of something, but not definitively a sign of something. And less than a quarter of 1% are actually verifiably criminal. So the door has absolutely been broken into. There's a sign of obvious theft, and so that's an awful lot of hours that are spent on that. If you take the average cost, fully loaded cost of an officer in the United States, that's about $193,000 a year when you take in pension plans and cost of cars and training and so on, and the salaries of those officers. And so we, conservatively think that number, in terms of police resource time spent responding to those alarms, is a little bit over $9.5 billion a year. And so, police, as they are constrained, are looking for ways to address this number and to bring it down. And so they do that lots of ways. Don't think this will be news to most of you who are in the monitoring space or in the in the security dealer space, but lots of initiatives underway and continuing to happen to do things like enhanced call verification, now renamed to enhanced call confirmation, permits and registrations, fees and fines, verified response jurisdictions, the euphemistically named broadcast and file, which is the Los Angeles and much of the West Coast answer to this question. Sort of, the officer will come if they find it, compelling, and then increasingly applying algorithms and technology and artificial intelligence to alarm scoring. So standards like the ones that are being worked on by the TMA and ANSI to try and standardize eliminating those things. All of those we think are effective to one degree or another in reducing the overall volume, but they're fighting against a tide of technology. So we're getting better at reducing the number of false alarms, but we're also at the same time creating many more additional alarms as we go. So we're putting more and more sensors in. We're making those sensors smarter. We're doing all of those types of things, but the volume of signals coming in is growing much faster than our ability to reduce the alarms. So, and then we're seeing technology like ASAP to PSAP and similar things, which really, at the end of the day, are about getting those signals faster to the police and getting more context to the police, but don't do anything to address the overwhelming volume of jobs to be done that we're asking our sworn officers to handle for us. And then we have the explosion of DIY, and an explosion that was going on, already pre-COVID, turning our world a little bit upside down, but that really has accelerated in the in the last year and a half as DIY has become an ever larger part of our alarm business. And we saw 55% of new systems last year that were done on a DIY basis and are likely to generate, even more false alarms, systems that are installed by users who are not trained to do these things and who are doing the best they can, but are doing it with, picking it up at the Home Depot, are much more likely to generate a false alarm on average than a professionally installed system, and so we think that rate is going to go up. So what are we doing about it? Many jurisdictions are turning to private security as part of the answer to this problem. At last, I know I've been a bit doom and gloom here, so at last some good news. There's about 1 million, give or take, police officers in the U.S. About 15% more security guards than there are police, and the cost per guard on a fully loaded basis is less than half as much. So that's the good news. There's another set of resources that we can use to respond to these problems and to do so, more rapidly. But the challenge there is still a challenge, and it's that there are a handful of big national guard companies, names who you all know, but most of that army of security guards, most of that 1 million plus security guards work for one of 21,494 smaller security firms. And so trying to patch them all together and build a network of them to serve your customers is pretty challenging. And you're left with a choice of, do we do business with one of the large guard companies who also likely has an electronic security arm and is to one degree or another a competitor of many of you, or do we try and put together our own network of the thousands of those little birds, are red-billed oxpeckers that are symbiotic with the hippo, or is there a better option? Is there some way to get the best of both worlds, that you can, have the coverage of the small network and the simplicity of the large one? We think, and here's my part of the shameless plug, we think Responder is the, answer that question, and we'd love to tell you more about it when this session is over. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mark. I've been in the alarm industry for almost 20 years, and those statistics are shockingly crazy to me. What a challenging situation in need of our attention and action. For the monitoring stations participating today, like a key takeaway for immediate application is for you to find your numbers. How long are your dispatchers on hold? This will help you to define the severity of the issue in your specific service area. Thanks again for sharing your thought leadership today, Mark. We sure do appreciate your partnership.
Thanks for having us.
Now for our final panelist, here to give us some strategies for improved staff retention, critical for all of us in today's tight labor market. We welcome Tina Simolaris. Tina, we are so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. So I want to thank you, Victoria and Meredith, for having me be a part of this. But I also wanted to applaud your efforts for reducing paper waste. We should all do our part from a business and a personal standpoint. And I was a part of a group that planted 50 plus trees over the last 3 years. So anything from reducing our waste to adding to the environment, I think is, definitely something we should do. So staff retention. So staff retention strategies. Almost all industries are experiencing an issue with staff retention. So I'll talk about why retention is important, drivers of retention, and strategies. So let's talk about tracking numbers. So we know staff retention is a company's ability to keep its employees, and then turnover rate is the percentage of employees leaving a company during a certain period of time. So you may have these numbers for a company as a whole, and if not, you should definitely start looking into them. But you should also look at them from a job classification and a tenure standpoint as well. And that way you can see where there may be turnover in certain departments or periods of time within your organization that an employee is there. So we only have projections for 2022, what we think it's going to look like. But from a 2021 report, 52% of responders said that they would job hunt in 2021. And that was up from 25% in 2020. So we know to expect that that will continue. So how did we get here? So the great resignation we've heard of, the great reprioritization, and there are so many other things. But COVID really was the thing that impacted us in the job market. And at first, people were afraid to start leaving their jobs. But as government supported the public, we saw federal government subsidies, we saw unemployment benefits. And then we looked at people were retiring. More people retired in the last couple of years than we've seen previously. We had conflicting responsibilities personally. So childcare, if schools were not being conducted in person, they were being remote taught. And then also there was hybrid. So trying to make sure to get your children back and forth to school and then helping them prepare while they're at home. And then elder care, things like that, where maybe children are now taking care of elder parents. There was a fear of COVID in the workplace, which there still is. There's more employee options because of the things that I just mentioned. So the retirement, the conflicting responsibilities, and then the fear of being in the workplace itself. So now you have more employment opportunity because more people are looking for employees. And then an interesting thing happened where there was a lot of reevaluation of personal goals and pivoting professions. So people were looking at it saying, okay, if I don't want to go back to this environment, what can I do for myself that I really have wanted to do? So people were looking at what their goals were and how their goals may be aligned with their company's goals, their current company. If they didn't align, then they would look for a company that did. And then when looking at pivoting their profession, they thought, is this really what I want to do? Maybe I should go back to school and look at a different career or a different profession. So 2022 is known as the year of the employee. And employers will continue to have an issue attracting and retaining qualified candidates through 2022. This isn't going to change. And why is managing staff important? If we can retain our staff members, then we understand that it will support the overall success of our business. We have experienced employees if they stay, employee engagement, better employee experience for them themselves, an enriched culture, increased productivity and improved quality. We have higher customer satisfaction when employees are happy. We can attract new employees. People will want to come to work for us. And then, of course, it increases our revenue and profitability as well. So a Deloitte study published in Fortune magazine in October of 2021 says that companies are now doing things like enhancing benefits to help retain their staff. We have some drivers of turnover. So here are things that we have to look at to say, are they happening in our organization and are they impacting our organization negatively? So inadequate onboarding strategies. So if we're not structured, if we are not engaging new hires, then they're not going to be engaged themselves. Poor communication across the board from an entry-level position to a management position. Supervisor dissatisfaction, and that again can go across the board. Insufficient training, lack of professional development and internal career mobility. If they don't see there's an opportunity for growth, then why are they going to stay there? Feeling overwhelmed and stressed, and again, that is all levels. Uneven work-life balance. That's important to everybody now. You know, with the opportunity to work from home, our personal life does get entangled in our business life now. And so less commuting, more opportunity to be around family. Feeling underappreciated and bored. Ineffective tools and resources. So if our technology is not great, then how is that going to affect our ability to do our job? And then flexibility from a scheduling standpoint. And then we have drivers of commitment. So we have high job satisfaction, competitive wages and benefits, fair and professional leadership, clear and consistent and two-way communication. Are we providing feedback? Are we asking our staff for feedback themselves? And then are we following up with that? Effective performance management. Are we looking at statistics? Are we going back and reviewing performance with staff? Is it a positive work environment? Are we helping our staff be engaged in a positive way? And then diversity inclusion. Are we making sure that everybody feels included in the business? Flexibility and understanding, again, goes back to that personal balance. And then ongoing training and education. Training should be ongoing. We should be able to provide an opportunity for people to learn and be able to grow within an organization. Career development does the same thing. So retention strategies. From a hiring strategy, we want to look at recruiting in the right places. So we have local colleges and universities. We have online job postings, referral programs, on-site recruiting fairs. If we're looking for specific positions to be filled, like technical positions, then look for niche job boards, specific to what you're looking for. When you're interviewing, have that process be organized and welcoming. You don't want somebody to feel like they're a burden to be a part of the organization. Use social media. Post things like employee testimonials, spotlight employees, even do a recruitment video. You can put those on social media and people can see what the organization is like from the inside out. And this is an important one, is having an accurate job description and relaying that properly. So making sure that you know what you're looking for, and when you're looking for it, relay that to the candidates. I've seen where we will have a job description, and then once the person starts, it really wasn't what we expected, and it wasn't what they expected. So that way, we are not choosing the right person. So you want to make sure that your job description and you're relaying that job description properly, because you want to choose the right person for that position. And then you have compensation and benefits. Be fair in compensation. Research like organizations. Be competitive. And then look at employees, look at your employee pool and provide and promote benefits that will be important to your employee pool. And that can range from something big to something small, different age groups, but you should look at your employee pool as a whole and see what's best for your organization. Communication. So it's important to have communication, but it should be effective communication. You want it to be clear and you want it to be courteous. We want to be professional and understanding of people when we're speaking to them. And not everybody takes communication the same way. So you have to look at the individual that you're speaking with or you're dealing with, and you want to make sure to cater it towards them. But you should always be clear. You should always be courteous. It should be timely. It should be consistent. And you definitely want to make sure to document your communication. And it shouldn't be one-sided. It should be two-sided, where you're asking for feedback and you're taking that feedback, you're listening, and you're doing something with it. And without regular communication, managers may not recognize employees that are no longer engaged. So you want to be aware of the employee's quality, the employee's productivity, and the employee's attendance. Those are triggers to a manager to say, maybe this person isn't as engaged as they previously were, or what we need them to be. Onboarding and orientation. So this is important as well. It starts from the beginning. It goes along with the hiring process that you have. So onboarding and orientation is important because you want to make sure that that person feels like they're a part of the organization. So make sure it's a structured onboarding program. It doesn't have to be so structured where it's dictating every minute, but you should have an understanding of what the person should have an understanding of what they're going to experience during the onboarding process. Make it personal so they do feel welcome, and then definitely make it interactive with them. Review company culture. Spotlight things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. Understand that with culture changes within an organization over time. So your culture in 1987 might not be the same culture that you want in 2022. Make clear the company's mission, vision, and values. And that goes the same way, is that your mission, vision, and values should reflect what you want that to be for 2022, not from 1987. And then review the importance of their role within the organization. So let them understand how important their role is and how it affects the business as a whole, and continue that ongoing. So the same thing with a culture and a mission, vision, value, and then the importance of an individual's role, that should be something consistently upfront with a staff member. So that should be, you should see that on a regular basis as an employee. It shouldn't be something that happens once in a while. It should consistently be visible to the staff member on how they fit in and agreeing with the mission, vision, values, and goals and culture of the organization. They should learn about all aspects of the company. So give insight to other departments. And definitely use mentors and coaches. That will help with the onboarding program as well. So using mentors and coaches allows the individual to have multiple people that they can go to and ask questions to. And it's not just one person that they feel that they need to speak to. And if the relationship is not comfortable for them, because maybe it's a manager, it's the person that's hired them, they will feel more comfortable having somebody else that they know is there to help them, coach them, and mentor them. So a Gallup poll found that only 12% of employees strongly agree with their organization's ability to onboard new employees. That's 12%. That doesn't sound very good. So retention and motivation, they really do go hand in hand. Recognition. So you motivate employees by recognizing them as well. So when you recognize your staff for doing a job well done, it will make them feel like they're more a part of something. Recognize them for hard work, positive behavior, good ideas. And even we don't do that a lot of time with good ideas. It's important to make sure that we say, again, we ask for feedback and then we recognize people for providing that feedback. It should be public. It should be made in a timely manner as well. And we should be specific when we're recognizing somebody. Motivation. So understand what motivates your employees. Show trust and respect, and make sure that you know that it's not just money that motivates them. make sure you understand for an individual, what motivates me might be different from what motivates somebody else. And so your supervisor and manager, you should make them feel comfortable that they can look at it from that individual standpoint. So flexibility, flexibility meaning your workspace. Are you remote? Are you on site? Are you hybrid of both? Schedules, working with staff members. Again, times have changed so much that personal schedules can affect the ability for somebody to work schedules. And that just means that we need to be a little bit more flexible with our staff if we're asking them to stay with us and be a part of the organization. And then the other thing is making sure to set boundaries between work and home, whether it's after hours, weekends, depending on what your business is like. Effective resources. Technology is important. So again, if the technology doesn't work for your staff member, they'll just be frustrated. And that in itself would make somebody not want to be a part of an organization. So being on top of things like that is important. Training guides, mentors and coaches, as I mentioned before, and workshops, being able to look at those things and say, we offer these things to our staff members and they're effective for them. And we don't expect to have to build everything ourselves. Workshops, training guides, those are things that you can use the internet for. You can use like organizations, go to people that you know, people that have done things like this before, and ask for support and help as well. So training and education, again, this is internal and external training. Provide the right training for the position. So when you're putting together the orientation for your staff, are you providing the training, whether it is for a supervisor, if it's for an agent, if it's for a manager? Providing the training of your organization is definitely important. Encourage self-development. And when you're training supervisors and managers, look for leadership training, active listening skills, soft skills. Those are all important things that a supervisor or manager will need to be successful with staff. There is training that should be ongoing. You can use internal and external training. There are free online courses. You can do EdApp, YouTube, Lessonly, LinkedIn. Colleges and universities provide free training as well. Harvard University, University of Georgia. There are so many different organizations, colleges, universities that provide free training. And then you also have trade organizations for training as well. So you have the ESA, the Electronic Security Association. You have SIA, which is the Security Industry Association, and the TMA, which is the Monitoring Association. But you also have call center and customer service organizations that do training as well. The ICMI. So go online, look for things. I have a list. And so after this presentation, you can always get in touch with me when my email is provided and ask for that information. I'm more than happy to share that. So training and education is important, but it goes along with career development. So promoting your staff, promote the growth that happens within your organization. If somebody has been here from an agent to a manager, then they started as an agent in 1987 and now they're a manager in 2022 or whatever that time frame is, but promote that growth so people see that there's an opportunity for them. Share internal success stories, whether you're using social media for that, whether you can put things on your website, you can spotlight employees in a meeting, in a town hall. Those are important things to let people know that there is growth here and that there's an opportunity for them. And of course, showing a path. Provide different experiences, offer lateral, vertical, and rotational positions. So you can go ahead and every position movement doesn't need to be a position where somebody is moving up into a different position or within the organization. It can be a lateral move. It gives them an opportunity for growth and to learn something new. Rotational, you can move them in and then move them out of positions as well. And then engaging staff. So use video meetings. If you are talking to your staff that is remote, then they should be done with video. Cameras should be on. You want to build a relationship with your staff. You can structure meetings by making sure to go around the room and ask everybody their opinion, or if they have something to say. So when you have a meeting, start, at the one point of the table or on your Zoom or Google Meets, and touch every single person to make sure that they've had an opportunity to speak. So employees engaged statistics show that 84% of highly engaged employees are those that receive recognition. That's important as well. Employee recognition adds motivation, pride, and self-confidence, which leads to increased productivity. We've talked about that. And then employees who are rewarded and recognized for jobs well done are highly engaged and then often go above and beyond their duties, leading to a better culture and overall performance for the organization. And the more disengaged employees are, the more they begin to look elsewhere. So remember, put yourself in their shoes. We've all been there. We've all started a job. We all want to be recognized. We all want training. We all want an opportunity for growth and development. So if you think about yourself as well in their shoes, then you'll think about what might work for them. Now, again, not everything that works for me might work for somebody else, but that's why it's important to know your staff and be a part of communicating with them on a regular basis so you understand what will motivate them. And then what I did was I have some suggested TED Talks here. And again, we can provide this information to you. So I listed a couple that I thought would be important. And then I've listed some suggested reading material as well. And of course, not that everything is a book now. We can always listen to something, whether we're riding our bike or taking a walk, but definitely something that we should do for ourselves is learn about how we can be better so then we can help our staff be better as well. So thoughts and ideas. So remind employees how they support your company's mission, vision, and value. You can add a cultural guide to your employee manual or handbook. Talk about things like diversity and inclusion. Create recognition, reward, and incentive programs. You can make sure to ask and listen to your staff. So use pulse surveys and cultural audits. You can react to feedback. So when you hear feedback, again, make that public and then provide what the solution would be for that. And then conduct exit and stay interviews. I know it's difficult to conduct exit interviews, but if we really focus on why people are leaving, then that should help us retain staff as well. Promote mental and physical well-being. So remote office and hybrid workplace solutions for people to be able to have a good work-life balance if that's appropriate within your organization. Encourage activity, well-being programs. So, you want programs that are going to make them healthier themselves. And you can actually use organizations like your own health insurance. So go to their website and see what they promote, and then you can promote that back to your staff. You don't have to think of all of these things yourself. And then you want to provide an opportunity for growth. So establish supervisor and management training programs. Even if you're not looking for a supervisor or manager today, establish those programs so then even your staff members, when they go through that process, then they understand where a manager and supervisor is coming from when they're doing their work. And then goal planning and reviewing. So define goals, learning goals, performance goals, process goals, and then reward those goals when they reach them. And they can be personal goals as well as professional goals. And that's all from me. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Tina. That was really excellent information. There's definitely some really easy to implement retention tips for everyone from that presentation. Some of the key things that I took away from the presentation, the flexibility in scheduling, especially that a lot of us have, 24/7 businesses, setting boundaries between work and home. I think that's something as leaders of companies that we always have to have on the forefront of our mind. We have so many different things on our plate, and it's 9 o'clock at night, and we might think, let me just shoot this email off, but it's going to ping that employee's phone, and they're going to be, uncontrollably tempted to look at that. And, actually there are some plugins with the Outlook Office product that you can get those ideas out, queue up those emails, and then you could set a time that's during business hours the next day for those emails to go if you are a manager or a leader that's working at night. I love this stuff that you said about, the right training for the position, encouraging the self-development. And lastly, some things that the last thing I took from that is ask what motivates them and create like simple recognition programs for your employees. So again, Tina, we really appreciate your thought leadership on staff retention here today. Very helpful and some great ideas.
Thank you.
For everyone joining us via webinar recording, this concludes the 2022 Security Industry Megatrends webinar on data privacy, alarm responsiveness, and staff retention. We hope you got a lot of great tips and best practices to evolve your business and make your life easier.